Okay, in this video, we're going to talk about lesson 4.4, which covers banking and the expansion of money supply. And what I've got here is a basic T-chart, and you're going to see a T-chart for each bank. And what you're going to have on one side of your T-chart will be assets, and the other side will be liabilities. And really quickly, assets will be money that the bank has. So I'll make a little note here. Money that the bank has, or it could be what people owe to the bank. So I'll make a little note here. What people owe to the bank. And on the other side, you're going to have liabilities. And liabilities will be money that the bank owes to its customers or to its owners or to other people. And in our class, the asset side of your T-chart should be exactly the same as the liability side. So in this case, $17,000 will be on the asset side and $17,000 should be on the liability side. And given this chart, the things that are going to be most important for us will be the deposits or the demand deposits on our liability side and any of the reserves. Now, you might see it as just reserves, or you might see it split up between required reserves and excess reserves. Every now and then, loans will come into play. Every now and then, securities will come into play. And securities are also known as bonds or U.S. government bonds. I will usually refer to them as bonds, but these are going to be the same thing. And you might see real estate or property as well, and that one we can pretty much ignore. But looking at this, what I see is that the deposit side will be customers putting money into the bank, and within that amount, some portion of that needs to stay as required reserves. And so looking at that, I can start to answer this first question. If $10,000 was deposited into the bank, a certain portion of that deposit amount needs to stay. And in this case, it looks like we have $1,000 out of a possible $10,000 that is in the required reserves. And so I can use those numbers to figure out the reserve requirement. So I'm going to have $1,000, and I'll change this to dark blue. I have $100 required of a total of $1,000 in my demand deposits. That is going to equal 0.10. So I have a 10% required reserve ratio. And that's going to be the percentage of demand deposits that needs to be kept in the reserves. And so given that reserve ratio, if Adrian deposits $1,000, what is going to be the initial change in money supply? The word here that matters the most is initial. And I just want to go back to our composition of M1. Cash or currency is going to be M1. And then if that gets deposited into a checking account or into a savings account, both of those are also M1. So there is no change initially in the money supply when the money goes from it goes in the form of cash to the form of a checking account. So there's no change initially in the money supply. When we start talking about changes in money supply after money's been deposited, lent out, redeposited, lent out, redeposited, lent out, and so on, then we will have a bigger change in the money supply. But right now, the change is zero. What will be the total change in the money supply? Now, this is what I'm referring to. After all of the money has been deposited and redeposited, you're going to get a much larger number. And what we can do is we can use this formula right here. So money created or any new loans or any change in the money supply will be the excess reserves times the money multiplier. If I go back up, I see that of my $10,000 deposit, $9,000 is in excess reserves. So I'm going to take $9,000 times my money multiplier, and my money multiplier, I need to go back up here and look at this formula right here. My money multiplier is going to be 1 over the required reserve ratio, which in this case is going to be 1 over 0.10, and that will equal 10. So my money multiplier is going to be 10. So 9,000 times 10 is going to get me $90,000. So the change in money supply from this deposit will be $90,000. The total change in demand deposits is a slightly different formula. Anytime we're talking about deposits, or you might see as maximum deposit expansion, that is going to be the original deposit amount, which in this case was $10,000 times that same multiplier. So I'll do that now. So 10,000 times my money multiplier in this case, which is 10, and that would get me $100,000. So it looks like right now there'll be $100,000 deposited. Some of that will stay in required reserves, and $90,000 will come from the excess reserves, which can get lent out, which is then new money. Remember, money is created when loans are made. Finally, the maximum amount of new loans that St. Ange Savings Bank, now this matters, just this one savings bank can make. And now this is assuming they're not going to do anything or sell any other assets. So in this case, St. Ange Savings Bank, this specific bank can only lend out what's in excess reserves. So what I'm really asking is, what is in excess reserves? And that answer is $9,000. And I know that because I have that right up here. $9,000 in my excess reserves. That is the amount that this one particular bank can lend out.